I was set down from the carrier's cart at the age of 3. And there, with a sense of bewilderment and terror, my life in the village began. The dune grass, amongst which I stood, was taller than I was, and I wept. I'd never been so close to grass before. It towered above me and all around me, each blade tattooed with tiger skins of sunlight. It was knife-edged, dark, and a wicked green, thick as a forest and alive with grasshoppers that chirped and chattered and leapt through the air like monkeys.
Are you serious, sir? I mean, do you really think the world's going to end this afternoon? Yes, in just over 1 minute and 35 seconds. Well, isn't there anything we can do? No, nothing. I always thought we were meant to lie down or put a paper bag over our head or something. Yes, if you like. Will that help? No. Excuse me, I've got to go find my friend. Oh well, last orders, please. You pinstriped barbarians, I'll sue the council for every penny it's got. I'll have you hung, drawn and quartered and whipped and boiled, and then I'll chop you up into little bits until you've had enough. Arthur, don't bother. There isn't time. Get over here. There's only 10 seconds left. And then I'll do it some more. And when I've finished, I'll take all the little bits and I will jump on them. I will carry on jumping on them until I get blisters, or I can think of something even more unpleasant to do. And then what the hell's that? An unearthly scream of jets thunders across the sky. A mass pandemonium breaks out with people shouting, running in every direction. Arthur, quick, over here. What the hell is it? It's a fleet of flying saucers. What do you think it is? Quick, you've got to hold onto this rod. What do you mean, flying saucers? Just that. It's a Vogon constructor fleet. A what? A Vogon constructor fleet. I picked up the news of their arrival a few hours ago on my sub-ether radio. Ford, I don't think I can cope with any more of this. I think I'll just go and have a little lie down somewhere. No, just stay here, keep calm, and just take hold of... People of Earth, your attention, please. This is Prostetnik Vogon Jeltz of the Galactic Hyperspace Planning Council. As you will no doubt be aware, the plans for the development of the outlying regions of the western spiral arm of the galaxy require the building of a hyperspace express route through your star system. And regrettably, your planet is one of those scheduled for demolition. The process will take slightly less than 2 of your Earth minutes. Thank you very much. There's no point in acting all surprised about it. All the planning charts and demolition orders have been on display at your local planning department in Alpha Centauri for 50 of your Earth years. So you've had plenty of time to lodge any formal complaints. It's far too late to start making a fuss about it now. What do you mean you've never been to Alpha Centauri? Oh, for heaven's sake, mankind. It's only 4 light years away, you know. I'm sorry, but if you can't be bothered to take an interest in local affairs, that's your own lookout. Energize the demolition beam. God, I don't know. Apathetic bloody planet. No sympathy at all. I bought some peanuts. Whoa, what? If you've never been through matter transference beam before, you probably lost some salt and proteins. The beer you had before we left should have cushioned your system a bit. How are you feeling? Like a military academy. Bits of me keep passing out. If I asked you where the hell we were, would I regret it? We're safe. Good. We're in a small galley cabin in one of the spaceships on the Vogon constructor fleet. Ah, this is obviously some sort of strange usage of the word safe that I wasn't previously aware of. I'll have a look for the light. All right, how did we get here? We hitched a lift. Excuse me? Are you trying to tell me that we just stuck out our thumbs and some bug-eyed monster stuck his head out and said, "Hi fellas, hop right in. I can take you as far as Basingstoke Roundabout"? Well, the thumb's an electronic sub-ether device The roundabout's a Barnard star 6 light years away, but otherwise, that's more or less right. And the bug-eyed monster? Is green, yes. Fine. When can I go home? You can't. Ah, I found the light. Good grief! Is this really the interior of a flying saucer? It certainly is. What do you think? It's a bit squalid, isn't it? What did you expect? Well, I don't know. Gleaming control panels, flashing lights, computer screens. Not old mattresses. These are the Dentrassi sleeping quarters. I thought they were called Vogons or something. Ah, the Vogons run the ship, the Dentrassi are the cooks. They let us on board. I'm confused. Here, have a look at this. What is it?
Just as the bees whirling round him, now menacing him and distracting his attention, prevented him from enjoying complete physical peace and forced him to restrain his movements to avoid them, so had the petty cares that had swarmed about him from the moment he got into the trap restricted his spiritual freedom. But that lasted only so long as he was among them. Just as his bodily strength was still unaffected, in spite of the bees, so too was the spiritual strength that he had just become aware of.
"Mother," said Annabel. Mother finished chewing her food completely, then swallowed it before finally replying, "Yes, my darling child." Chloe took one of her sausages off the plate and hid it in her napkin. It was Saturday evening, and the Crumb family sat in the dining room table, missing Strictly Come Dancing and the X Factor, as they ate their dinner. Mother had banned watching television and eating at the same time. She had decided it was awfully common. Instead, the family had to sit in icy silence and eat their dinner, staring at the walls. Or sometimes Mother would choose a subject for discussion. Normally what she would do if she ran the country. That was her absolute favourite. Mother had given up running a beauty salon to stand for Parliament and had no doubt in her mind that one day she would be Prime Minister. Mother had named the white Persian family Cat Elizabeth after the Queen. She was obsessed with being posh. There was a downstairs loo, and it was kept locked for very important guests, as if a member of the royal family was going to swing by for a waz. There was a china tea set in the cupboard that was for best and had never once been used. Mother even sprayed air freshener in the garden. Mother would never go out, or not even answer the door unless immaculately groomed, and her beloved curls around her neck and her hair made stiff with enough hairspray to create her hole in an ozone layer. She was so used to turning up her nose at everything and everything, it was in danger of staying that way. Here's a picture of her.
As Harry stepped forward, whispers suddenly broke out like little hissing fires all over the hall. "Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter?" The last thing Harry saw before the hat dropped over his eyes was the hall full of people craning to get a good look at him. Next second he was looking at the black inside of the hat. He waited. Said a small voice in his ear. "Difficult, very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent. Oh my goodness, yes. And a nice thirst to prove yourself. Now that's interesting. So where shall I put you?" Harry gripped the edges of the stool and thought, "Not Slytherin, not Slytherin." "Not Slytherin, eh?" said the small voice. "Are you sure? You could be great, you know. It's all here in your head. And Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness. No doubt about that. No? Well, if you're sure, better be Gryffindor."
I wipe my hand across my face. I'm sweating. Miss Celia's listening with her mouth open, looking dazed. I tell her, "No thank you, Miss Hilly." And so she says to pay me 50 cents more. I say, "No, ma'am, no thank you." And then she breaks my back. Miss Celia, she tells me she knows about the Childs and the Railways and all them others that turned me down. Said it was 'cause she made sure everybody knew I was a thief. I never stole a thing in my life, but she told everybody I did, and wasn't nobody in town going to hire a mass-mouthing, thieving nigger for a maid, and I might as well go ahead and work for her for free. And that's how come I did it. Miss Celia blinks at me. What, Minnie? I tell her to eat my shit. Miss Celia sits there looking dazed. Then I go home. I mix up that chocolate custard pie. I put sugar in it and baker's chocolate and the real vanilla my cousin brings me from Mexico. I tote it over to Miss Walters' house, where I know Miss Millie's, be secreting around waiting for the home to come and get her manners so she can sell that house. Go through her silver, collect her due. As soon as I put that pie down on the countertop, Miss Hilly smiles, thinking it's a peace offering. Like that's my way of showing her I'm real sorry about what I said. And then I watch her. I watch her eat it myself. Put 2 big pieces. She stuffs it in her mouth like she ain't even eaten nothing so good. Then she say, I knew you'd change your mind, Minnie. I knew I'd get my way in the end. And she laughed, kind of a prizzy, like it was real funny to her. That's when Miss Walters, she says, getting mighty hungry too, asks for a piece of that pie. I tell her, no, ma'am, that's one special pie for Miss Hilly. Miss Hilly says, Mama can have some too if she wants, just a little piece though. What do you put in here, Minnie, that makes it taste so good? I say, that's good vanilla from Mexico. And then I go ahead. I go to what else I can think of putting the pie for her. Miss Celia's still as a stone, staring at me. But I can't meet her eyes now. Miss Walters, her mouth fall open. Nobody in that kitchen say anything so long. They could make out that I was a dwarf or they knew I was gone. But then Miss Walters starts laughing. Laughs so hard she almost falls out the chair. Saying, well, Hilly, that's you. That's what you get, I guess. I wouldn't go tatting on Minnie either, or you'll know you'll be all over town the lady who had 2 slices of Minnie's shit. I look up at Miss Celia. She's staring wide-eyed, disgusted. I start to panic that I told her this. She'll never trust me again. I walk over to the yellow chair and I sit myself down.
Northern Lights, Philip Pullman. Come on, Lyra screamed and flung herself at the gate into the avenue of lights. The children streamed after her, every one, dodging the snapping jaws of the wolves and racing as hard as they could down the avenue towards the beckoning open dark beyond. A harsh scream came from behind as an officer shouted an order, and then a score of rifle bolts worked at once, and then there was another scream and a tense silence, with only the fleeing children's pounding feet and gasping breath to be heard. They were taking aim, and they wouldn't miss. But before they could fire, a choking gasp came from one of the Tartars, and a cry of surprise from another. Lyra stopped and turned to see a man lying on the snow, with a grey feathered arrow in his back. He was writhing and twitching and coughing out blood, and the other soldiers were looking around to the left and the right for whoever had fired it, but the archer was nowhere to be seen. And then an arrow came flying straight down from the sky, and it struck another man behind the head. He fell at once. A shout from the officer, and everyone looked up at the dark sky. Witches, said Pantaleimon. And so they were, a ragged, elegant black shape sweeping past high above, with a hiss and swish of air through needles of the cloud pine branches as they flew on, and Lyra watched as one swooped low and loosed an arrow and another man fell.
Chapter 1. Description of Farmer Oak, an incident. When Farmer Oak smiled, the corners of his mouth spread till they were within an unimportant distance of his ears. His eyes were reduced to chinks, and diverging wrinkles appeared around them, extending upon his countenance, like the rays in a rudimentary sketch of the rising sun. His Christian name was Gabriel, and on working days he was a young man of sound judgment, easy motions, proper dress, and general good character. On Sundays he was a man of misty views, rather given to postponing, and hampered by his best clothes and umbrella. Upon the whole, one who felt himself to occupy morally that vast middle space of Lacedæmonian neutrality which lay between the communion people of the parish and the drunken section. That is, he went to church, but yawned privately by the time the congregation reached the Nicene Screed, and thought of what there would be for dinner when he meant to be listening to the sermon. or to state his character as it stood in the scale of public opinion. When his friends and critics were in tantrums, he was considered rather a bad man. When they were pleased, he was rather a good man. And when they were neither, he was a man whose moral colour was a kind of pepper and salt mixture.
Last night, I dreamt I went to Manderley again. It seemed to me I stood by the iron gate leading to the drive, and for a while I could not enter, for the way was barred to me. There was a padlock and a chain upon the gate. I called in my dream to the lodge-keeper, and had no answer, and peering closer through the rusted spokes of the gate, I saw that the lodge was uninhabited. No smoke came from the chimney, and the little lattice windows gaped forlorn. Then, like all dreamers, I was possessed of a sudden with supernatural powers and passed like a spirit through the barrier before me. The drive wound away in front of me, twisting and turning as it had always done. But as I advanced, I was aware that a change had come upon it. It was narrow and unkempt, not the drive that we had known. At first I was puzzled and did not understand, and it was only when I bent my head to avoid a low swinging branch of a tree that I realised what had happened. Nature had come into her own again, and little by little, with her stealthy, insidious way, had encroached upon the drive with long, tenacious fingers, and woods, always a menace even in the past, had triumphed in the end. They crowded, dark and uncontrolled, to the borders of the drive. The beeches, with white, naked limbs, leant close to one another, their branches intermingled with a strange embrace, making a vault over my head like an archway of a church. And there were other trees as well, trees that I did not recognise, squat oaks and tortured elms that straggled cheek by jowl with the beeches and had thrust themselves out of the quiet earth along with monstrous shrubs and plants, none of which I remembered. The drive was a ribbon now, a thread of his former self, with gravel service gone, and choked with grass and moss. The trees had thrown out low branches, making impediment to progress. The gnarled roots looked like skeleton claws, scattered here and again. Among this jungle growth, I would recognise shrubs that had been landmarks in our time. Things of culture and grace, hydrangeas whose blue heads had been famous. No hand had checked their progress, and they had gone native now, rearing to monster height without a bloom, black and ugly as the nameless parasites that grew beside them. On and on, now east, now west, wound the poor thread that had once been our drive. Sometimes I thought it lost, but it appeared again beneath a fallen tree perhaps, or struggling on the other side of a muddy ditch, created by winter rains. I had not thought the way so long. Surely the miles had multiplied, even as the trees had done. And this path led but to a labyrinth, some choked wilderness, and not to a house at all. I came upon it suddenly, the approach masked by the unnatural growth of a vast shrub that spread in all directions. And I stood, my heart thumping in my breast, the strange prick of tears behind my eyes. There was Manderley, our Manderley, secretive and silent as it had always been, the grey stone shining in the moonlight of my dream, the mullioned windows reflecting the green lawns of the terrace. Time could not wreck the perfect symmetry of those walls, nor the site itself, a jewel in the hollow of a hand.
There was no possibility of taking a walk that day. We had been wandering indeed in the leafless shrubbery an hour in the morning, but since dinner Mrs. Reed, when there was no company, dined early. The cold winter wind had brought with it clouds so sombre and a rain so penetrating that further outdoor exercise was now out of the question. I was glad of it. I never liked long walks, especially on chilly afternoons. Dreadful to me was the coming home in the raw twilight, with nipped fingers and toes, and a heart saddened by the chidings of Bessie the nurse, and humbled by the consciousness of my physical inferiority to Eliza, John, and Georgina Reed.
In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice, and I've been turning it over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he said, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you have. He didn't say any more, but we've always been unusually communicative in a reserved way, and I understood that he meant a great deal more than that. In consequence, I'm inclined to reserve all judgments, a habit that has opened up many curious natures to me, and also made me the victim of not a few veteran bores. The abnormal mind is quick to detect and attach itself to this quality when it appears in a normal person. And so it came about that in college I was unjustly accused of being a politician, because I was privy to the secret griefs of wild, unknown men. Most of the confidences were unsought. Frequently I have feigned sleep, preoccupation, or a hostile levity, when I realised by some unmistakable sign that an intimate revelation was quivering on the horizon. For the intimate revelations of young men, or at least the terms in which they express them, are usually plagiaristic and marred by obvious suppressions. Reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope. I am still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that, as my father snobbishly suggested, and I snobbishly repeat, a sense of the fundamental decencies is paralleled out unequally at birth. And after boasting this way of my tolerance, I come to the admission that it has a limit. Conduct may be founded on the hard rock or the wet marshes, but after a certain point, I don't care what it's founded on. When I came back from the East last autumn, I felt that I wanted the world to be in uniform and at a sort of moral attention forever. I wanted no more riotous excursions with privileged glimpses into the human heart. Only Gatsby, the man who gives his name to this book, was exempt from my reaction. Gatsby, who represented everything for which I have an unaffected scorn. If personality is an unbroken series of successful gestures, then there was something gorgeous about him, some heightened sensitivity to the promises of life, as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes 10,000 miles away. This responsiveness had nothing to do with that flabby impressionability, which is dignified under the name of the creative temperament. It was an extraordinary gift for hope, a romantic readiness such as I have never found in any other person, and which it is not likely I shall ever find again. No. Gatsby turned out to be all right in the end. It is what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams, that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men.
Ooh.
And did she ever mention me? He asked, hesitating, as if he dreaded the answer to his question would introduce details that he could not bear to hear. Her senses never returned. She recognised nobody from the time you left her, I said. She lies with a sweet smile on her face, and her latest ideas wandered back to pleasant early days. Her life closed in a gentle dream. May she wake as kindly in the other world. May she wake in torment, he cried, with frightful vehemence, stamping his foot and groaning in a sudden paroxysm of ungovernable passion. Why, she's a liar to the end. Where is she? Not there, not in heaven, not perished. Where? Oh, you said you cared nothing for my sufferings, and I pray one prayer, and I repeat it till my tongue stiffens. Catherine Earnshaw, may you not rest as long as I am living. You said I killed you. Haunt me then. The murderers do haunt their murderers, I believe. I know that ghosts have wandered on the earth. Be with me always. Take any form. Drive me mad. Only do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you. Oh, God, it is unutterable. I cannot live without my life. I cannot live without my soul. He dashed his head against the knotted trunk and, lifting up his eyes, howled, not like a man, but like a savage beast being goaded to death with knives and spears. I observed several splashes of blood about the bark of the tree, and his hand and forehead were both stained. Probably the scene I witnessed was a repetition of others acted during the night. It hardly moved my compassion. It appalled me. Still, I felt reluctant to quit him so. But the moment he recollected himself enough to notice me watching, he thundered a command for me to go, and I obeyed. It was beyond my skill to quiet or console.
Wednesday, April 15th. Went to the youth club with Nigel. It was dead good. We played ping pong until the balls cracked. Then we had a go on the football table. I beat Nigel 50 goals to 13. Nigel went into a sulk and said that he only lost because his goalkeeper's legs were stuck on with sellotape, but he was wrong. It was my superior skill that did it. A gang of punks passed unkind comments about my flared trousers, but Rick Lemon, the youth leader, stepped in and led a discussion on personal taste. We all agreed it should be up to the individual to dress how he or she likes. All the same, I think I'll ask my father if I can have a new pair of trousers. Not many 14-year-olds wear flared trousers today, and I don't wish to be conspicuous. Barry Kent tried to get in the fire doors to avoid paying his 5p subs, but Rick Lemon pushed him back outside into the rain. I was very pleased. I owe Barry Kent £2 Menace's money. Thursday, April 16th. Got a birthday card from my Auntie Susan, 2 weeks late. She always forgets the right day. My father said she's under a lot of pressure because of her job, but I can't see it myself. I'd have thought that being a prison wardress was dead cushy. It's only locking and unlocking doors after all. She sent a present via the GPO, so with luck I should get it by Christmas. Ha ha. Friday, April 17th. Good Friday. Poor Jesus, it must have been dead awful for him. I wouldn't have had the guts to do it myself. The dog has mauled the hot cross buns. It doesn't respect any traditions. Saturday, April 18th. Got parcel from Auntie Susan. It's an embroidered toothbrush holder and it was made by one of the prisoners. She is called Grace Poole. Auntie Susan said I should write and thank her. It's bad enough that my father's sister works in Holloway Prison, but now I'm expected to start writing to the prisoners. Grace Poole could be a murderess or anything. Still waiting for the £11.80. Doesn't seem as if my mother is desperate to see me. Sunday, April 19th, Easter Sunday. Today is the day that Jesus escaped from the cave. I expect that Houdini got the idea from him. My father forgot to go to the bank on Friday, so we are penniless. I had to take the pop bottles back to the shop to buy myself an Easter egg. Watched film, then had a fantastic tea at Grandma's. She'd made a cake covered in little fluffy chicks. Some of the fluff got into my father's mouth. He had to have his back thumped hard. He always manages to spoil things. He has no social decorum at all. Went to see Bert Baxter after tea. He was pleased to see me and I felt a bit rotten because I've neglected him lately. He gave me a pile of comics. They're called The Eagle and they have got great pictures. I read them until 3 a.m. this morning. Us intellectuals keep antisocial hours. It does us good.
On March the 8th, I was 12 years old. The first thing I did was sniff under my arms the way that my mother does. Nothing. I didn't smell a thing. Still, now that I was 12, I decided I better use deodorant just in case. I went into my parents' bathroom and reached for my mother's roll-on. When I got dressed, I went down to the kitchen for breakfast. "Happy birthday, Margaret," my mother sang, bending over to kiss me while I was drinking my orange juice. "Thank you, Mum," I said. "I used your deodorant." My mother laughed. "You don't have to use mine. I'll get you your own." "You will?" I asked. "Sure, if you want to use it regularly." "Well, I think I'd better. I'm 12 years old now, you know." I know. My mother smiled at me while she cut some banana onto my cereal. "Grandma sent me a $100 savings bond as she does every year, plus 3 new sweaters with "Made expressly for you" by Grandma labels in them, a new bathing suit and an airline ticket to Florida. Round trip leaving from Newark Airport at noon on April the 4th. Was I excited? In school, Mr. Benedict shook my hand and wished me a lot of good luck in the coming year. He led the class in singing "Happy Birthday" to me. Nancy, Janie and Gretchen chipped in and bought me the new Mice Men record album. They gave it to me at lunch. Nancy mailed me a separate birthday card signed, "A million thanks to the best friend a girl could ever have." I guess she was still scared I'd give away her secret.
Hello, I'm going to read you a passage from my favourite book. "Oh, Mr. Bennet, you are wanted immediately. We are all in an uproar. You must come and make Lizzie marry Mr. Collins, but she vows she will not have him, and if you do not make haste, he will change his mind and not have her." Mr. Bennet raised his eyes from his book as she entered and fixed them on her face with a calm unconcern which was not in the least altered by her communication. "I have not the pleasure of understanding you," he said when she had finished her speech. "Of what are you talking?" "Of Mr. Collins and Lizzie. Lizzie declares she will not have Mr. Collins, and Mr. Collins begins to say that he will not have Lizzie. And what am I to do on the occasion? It seems a hopeless business." "Speak to Lizzie about it yourself. Tell her that you insist upon her marrying him." "Let her be called down. She shall hear my opinion." Mrs. Bennet rang the bell, and Miss Elizabeth was summoned to the library. "Come here, child," cried her father as she appeared. "I have sent for you on an affair of importance. I understand that Mr. Collins has made you an offer of marriage. Is it true?" Elizabeth replied that it was. "Very well. And this offer of marriage you have refused?" "I have, sir." "Very well. We now come to the point. Your mother insists upon your accepting it. Is that not so, Mrs. Bennet?" "Yes, or I will never see her again." "An unhappy alternative is before you, Elizabeth. For this day you must be a stranger to one of your parents. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do." Elizabeth could not smile at such a conclusion of such beginning, but Mrs. Bennet, who had persuaded herself that her husband regarded the affair as she wished, was excessively disappointed. "What do you mean, Mr. Bennet, by talking in this way? You promised me to insist upon her marrying him." "My dear," replied her husband, "I have 2 small favours to request. First, that you will allow me the free to use of my understanding on the present occasion, and secondly, of my room. I shall be glad to have the library to myself as soon as may be. Thank you."
It begins with absence and desire. It begins with blood and fear. It begins with a discovery of witches. Volume 19 of Notes and Queries slid backwards 4 inches, tipped at an angle as if an invisible hand were pulling it down, and fell into my open palm with a soft thwack. Once there, it flopped open to the page I needed. It had taken all of 3 seconds. I let out another breath to exhale some of my guilt. Suddenly, 2 icy patches bloomed between my shoulder blades. I had been seen. but not by an ordinary human observer. When one witch studies another, the touch of their eyes tingles. Witches aren't the only creatures sharing the world with humans, however. There are also demons, creative, artistic creatures who walk a tightrope between madness and genius. Rock stars and serial killers was how my aunt described these strange, perplexing beings. And there are vampires, ancient and beautiful, who feed on blood and will charm you utterly if they don't kill you first. When a demon takes a look, I feel the slight unnerving pressure of a kiss. But when a vampire stares, it feels cold, focused, and dangerous. I mentally shuffled through the readers in Duke Humphrey's library. There had been one vampire, a cherubic monk who pored over medieval missals and prayer books like a lover. But vampires aren't often found in rare book rooms. Occasionally, one succumbed to vanity and nostalgia and came in to reminisce, but it wasn't common. Witches and demons were far more typical in libraries. But it wasn't a witch or a demon that watched me now. It was a vampire.
This is from All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Congenital cataracts, bilateral, irreparable. Can you see this? Asked the doctors. Can you see this? Mary Laura will not see anything for the rest of her life. Spaces she once knew as familiar, the 4-room flat she shares with her father, the little tree-lined square at the end of their street, have become labyrinths, bristling with hazards. Drawers are never where they should be. The toilet is an abyss. A glass of water is too near, too far, her fingers too big, always too big. What is blindness? Where there should be a wall, her hands find nothing. Where there should be nothing, a table leg gouges her shin. Cars growl in the streets, leaves whisper in the sky, blood rustles through her inner ears. In the stairwell, in the kitchen, even beside her bed, grown-up voices speak of despair. Poor child, poor Monsieur Leblanc. Hasn't had an easy road, you know. His father dead in the war, his wife dead in childbirth, and now this. Like they're cursed. Look at her. Look at him. Ought to send her away. Those are months of bruises and wretchedness, rooms pitching like sailboats, half-open doors striking Mary Laura's face. Her only sanctuary is in bed, the hem of her quilt at her chin, while her father smokes another cigarette in the chair beside her, whittling away at one of his tiny models, his little hammer going tap, 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 his little square of sandpaper making a rhythmic, soothing rasp. The despair doesn't last. Mary Laura is too young, and her father is too patient. There are, he assures her, no such thing as curses. There is luck, maybe, bad or good. A slight inclination of each day towards success or failure, but no curses. 6 mornings a week, he wakes her before dawn, and she holds her arms in the air while he dresses her. Stockings, dress, sweater. If there's time, he makes her try to knot her shoes herself. Then they drink a cup of coffee together in the kitchen. Hot, strong, as much sugar as she wants. At 6:40, she collects her white cane from the corner, loops a finger through the back of her father's belt, and follows him down 4 flights and up 6 blocks to the museum.
Already the ring tempted him, gnawing at his will and reason. Wild fantasies arose in his mind, and he saw Samwise the Strong, hero of the age, striding with a flaming sword across the darkened land, and armies flocking to his call as he marched to the overthrow of Barad-dûr. And then all the clouds rolled away, and the white sun shone, and at his command the Vale of Gorgoroth became a garden of flowers and trees, and brought forth fruit. He had only to put on the ring and claim it for his own, and all this could be. In that hour of trial, it was the love of his master that helped most to hold him firm. But also, deep down in him, lived still unconquered his plain hobbit sense. He knew in the core of his heart that he was not large enough to bear such a burden, even if such visions were not a mere cheat to betray him. The one small garden of a free gardener was all his need and due, not a garden swollen to a realm. His own hands to use, not the hands of others to command.
Chapter 1. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. However little known the feelings or views of such a man may be on his first entering a neighbourhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered the rightful property of some one or other of their daughters. "My dear Mr. Bennet," said his lady wife to him one day, "have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last?" Mr. Bennet replied that he had not. "But it is," returned she, "for Mrs. Long has just been here, and she told me all about it." Mr. Bennet made no answer. "Do you not want to know who has taken it?" cried his wife impatiently. "You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it." This was invitation enough.
Rosie the hen went for a walk across the yard, around the pond, over the haystack, past the mill, through the fence, under the beehives, and got back in time for dinner.
Holding hands in the dark. If you look at satellite photographs of the Far East by night, you'll see a large splotch, curiously lacking in light. This area of darkness is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Next to this mysterious black hole, South Korea, Japan, and now China fairly gleam with prosperity. Even from hundreds of miles above, the billboards, the headlights and the streetlights, the neon of the fast food chains appear as tiny white dots, signifying people going about their business as 21st century energy consumers. Then, in the middle of it all, an expanse of blackness. Nearly as large as England, it is baffling how a nation of 23 million people can appear as vacant as the oceans. North Korea is simply a blank.
"Oi, frog, sit on a log," said the cat. "But I don't want to sit on a log," said the frog. "Logs are all knobbly and uncomfortable, and they can give you splinters in your bottom." "I don't care," said the cat. "You are a frog, so you must sit on a log." "Can't I sit on a mat?" asked the frog. "Only cats sit on mats," said the cat. "What about a chair?" said the frog. "I wouldn't mind sitting on a chair." "Hares sit on chairs," said the cat. "Perhaps I could sit on a stool," said the frog. "Mules sit on stools," said the cat. "What about a sofa?" said the frog. "I could stretch right out on a sofa." "Gophers sit on sofas," said the cat. "It's very simple, really. Cats sit on mats, hares sit on chairs, mules sit on stools, and gophers sit on sofas, and frogs sit on logs." "What about lions?" asked the frog. "Lions sit on irons," said the cat. "Ouch," said the frog. "What do parrots sit on?" "Parrots sit on carrots," said the cat. "Lions sit on irons and parrots sit on carrots." "Doesn't sound very comfortable," said the frog. "It's not about being comfortable," said the cat. "It's about doing the right thing." "What do foxes sit on?" asked the frog. "Foxes sit on boxes," said the cat. "Foxes sit on boxes and fleas sit on peas." What do goats sit on? Asked the frog. Goats sit on coats, said the cat. Goats sit on coats, cows sit on ploughs, and storks sit on forks. What do gorillas sit on? Asked the frog. Gorillas sit on pillars, said the cat. Gorillas sit on pillars, rats sit on hats, weasels sit on easels, moles sit on poles. What do seals sit on? Asked the frog. Don't you know anything? Said the cat. Seals sit on wheels. Doves sit on gloves. Newts sit on flutes. Lizards sit on wizards. And apes sit on grapes. What about puffins? Asked the frog. Puffins sit on muffins, said the cat. Puffins sit on muffins. Snakes sit on cakes. Owls sit on towels. Gibbons sit on ribbons. Lambs sit on jams. Bees sit on keys. And pumas sit on satsumas. Well, I never knew that, said the frog. Well, you do now, said the cat. What do dogs sit on? Asked the frog. I was hoping you weren't going to ask that, said the cat. Help.
Peel's bibliography. Only have 30 seconds. Since I was, I don't know, about that high, I've always described the moment in which I first heard Elvis on the radio as being the defining moment in my life. It's certainly up there with the first time I saw Sheila and Alan Kennedy's goal against Real Madrid in the Parc des Princes. Anyway, I heard Elvis as I probably heard
I still remember the day my father took me to the cemetery of forgotten books for the first time. It was the early summer of 1945, and we walked through the streets of Barcelona, trapped beneath ashen skies as dawn poured over Rambla de Santa Monica in a wreath of liquid copper. Daniel, you mustn't tell anyone what you're about to see today, my father warned. Not even your friend Thomas. Not even Mummy. My father sighed, hiding behind the sad smile that followed him like a shadow all through his life.
The boy picked up the knife and was about to cut into the cake when he stopped. He stared at the cake, then he looked up at the Trunchbull, then at the tall, stringy cook with her lemon juice mouth. All the children in the hall were watching tensely, waiting for something to happen. They felt certain it must. The Trunchbull was not a person who would give someone a whole chocolate cake to eat, just out of kindness. Many were guessing that it had been filled with pepper or castor oil, or some other foul-tasting substance that would make the boy violently sick. It might even be arsenic, and he would be dead in 10 seconds flat. Or perhaps it would be a booby-trapped cake, and the whole thing would blow up the moment it was cut, taking Bruce Bogtrotter with it. No one in the school put it past the Trunchbull to do any of these things. "I don't want to eat it," the boy said. "Taste it, you little brat," the Trunchbull said. "You're insulting the cook." Very gingerly the boy began to cut a thin slice of the vast cake. Then he levered the slice out. Then he put down the knife and took the sticky thing in his fingers and started very slowly to eat it. "It's good, isn't it?" the Trunchbull asked. "Very good," the boy said, chewing and swallowing. He finished the slice. "Have another," the Trunchbull said. "That's enough, thank you," the boy murmured. "I said have another," the Trunchbull said, and now there was an altogether sharper edge to her voice. "Eat another slice. Do as you're told." "I don't want another slice," the boy said. Suddenly the Trunchbull exploded. "Eat!" she shouted, banging her thigh with the riding crop. "If I tell you to eat, you will eat. You wanted cake, you stole cake, and now you've got cake. What's more, you're going to eat it. You do not leave this platform, and nobody leaves this hall until you've eaten the entire cake that is sitting in front of you. Do I make myself clear, Bogtrotter? Do you get my meaning?" The boy looked at the Trunchbull, then he looked down at the enormous cake. "Eat, eat, eat!" the Trunchbull was yelling. Very slowly the boy cut himself another slice and began to eat it. Matilda was fascinated. "Do you think he can do it?" she whispered to Lavender. "No," Lavender whispered back. "It's impossible. He'd be sick before he was halfway through." The boy kept going. When he'd finished the second slice, he looked at the Trunchbull, hesitating. Eat, she shouted. Greedy little thieves who like to eat cake must have cake. Eat faster, boy, eat faster. We don't want to be here all day. And don't stop like you're doing now. Next time you stop before it's all finished, you'll go straight into the chokey. And I shall lock the door and throw the key down the well. The boy cut a third slice and started to eat it. He finished this one quicker than the other two, and when that was done, he immediately picked up the knife and cut the next slice. In some peculiar way, he seemed to be getting into his stride. Matilda, watching closely, saw no signs of distress in the boy yet. If anything, he seemed to be gathering confidence as he went along. He's doing well, she whispered to Lavender. He'll be sick soon, Lavender whispered back. It's going to be horrid. When Bruce Bogtrotter had eaten his way through half the entire enormous cake, he paused just a couple of seconds and took several deep breaths. The Trunchbull stood with hands on hips, glaring at him. Get on with it, she shouted. Eat it up. Suddenly the boy let out a gigantic belch, which rolled around the assembly hall like thunder. Many of the audience began to giggle. Silence! Silence! Shouted the Trunchbull.